Now that we have completed the configuration for dynamic BGP peering, the next step is to verify the neighbor relationship between the hub and the spoke devices. It's using the same old command that we have been using for years. Show BGP IPv4 unicast summary or show IP BGP summary. You can use either of these commands. The one big difference that you're going to see between a regular BGP peer and a dynamic BGP peer is that before each dynamic BGP peer, you will see an asterisk mark. That asterisk mark will indicate that the BGP peer is dynamically established and it's based on the subnet range that is specified under the configuration. And if you see, the command also lists down what is the subnet range that you have specified as part of the peer group test. So it is 192.168.0.0/16. And you can see the neighborship has been formed for the neighbor 192.168.3.2 in AS number 200. Let's now go back to our lab. So in the lab, since the configuration is done and the BGP neighborship, as we can see on the screen, are also up, let's verify the BGP neighbor relationship. So show BGP IPv4 unicast summary. You can always use show IP BGP summary as well. It's just that to have standard command line on different platforms, I prefer to use BGP IPv4 unicast summary command. So if you notice the command output, you will notice that there are 3 neighborships established, and all those 3 neighborships are having an asterisk mark before them, and they are part of different AS numbers, 200, 300, and 400 respectively. But the interesting thing is the peer group is just for this one subnet. So you define a subnet, you specify how many neighbors you want to establish, and then you specify out of which AS numbers you want to allow the neighbor connections. And once you do that, it will dynamically establish all the neighbor relationships. Now that we have established all the BGP neighborships dynamically, we would also want to understand how the TCP connections look like. Remember, I mentioned that the TCP will be passively listening on the router for all the BGP connections coming towards the router on that subnet. We can run the command show TCP brief all and then specify numeric. Once we run this command, notice that there are 3 entries for the 3 neighbor relationships that were established. But the 4th entry is for the BGP, which is passively listening for all the incoming connections. This proves that the router is passively listening for BGP connections on port 179.